Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 353, and today's date is April 29th, 2014, and the title of this episode is The Central Bankers Are Running Out of Time as the Economic Collapse Accelerates. And we just have to take a look at what is going on in the economy. We see consumer spending is completely declining. We see real estate is imploding. Prices are starting to come down. We already understand that the American people are not purchasing the homes. Mortgage origination down by 66%, and we are seeing that these unemployment numbers are completely fictional, fake, completely made up to keep this illusion alive. Of course, the stock market's going up, gold has been suppressed, and we're having problems all around the world. Ukraine didn't go the way the central bankers wanted. The Middle East is completely falling apart, and it looks like the United States government's central bankers will be bringing in forces to maintain control of the entire area. Central Africa completely falling apart. So what we are seeing here is pretty much everything coming together now and falling apart. It is accelerating. Things are not getting better. They are getting worse. They are getting worse in the European nations. They are not getting better there. And if we head out to Spain, we are seeing that unemployment inches up to 26%. Well, they say 25.9%, but let's say 26% here. Of course, these are the government numbers, and you know unemployment is probably much, much higher because, you know, they manipulate it a little bit, they tweak it a little bit, and we can see that this is probably a lot worse than it really is. Now, back in 2013, unemployment was around 25.7, and it increased to 25.9, and we are seeing this happen in every single one of the European nations. Unemployment is continually going up, and these figures are by the National Statistic Institute in Madrid. They revealed on Tuesday that the jobless rate continually is it's continually rising. It is not falling. And they are expecting unemployment to continually rise in the foreseeable future right now because they don't see how they're going to get out of this situation. They have a huge amount of debt, more austerity on the way. People are suffering, and this is not going to end. And we can see that this is not the only country in Europe that's going through this. We see that Cyprus is going through this. We see Greece is going through this. France is going through this. Portugal is going through this. Italy is going through this, and this is not going to stop. It is going to spread into every single other country, and of course, here in the United States, we have a complete illusion, like everything is fine. As long as we keep our eyes on the stock market, we have no worries. And today in the corporate media, they are out there that the U.S. economy is likely to rebound from the slow first quarter, and they're seeing good things happening later this year. Expect a dreary report on Wednesday when the government issues its first estimate of how fast the U.S. economy grew in January through March. And of course, that was the weather. The weather made all the retail stores close down. It made real estate implode on itself, and people can't find work, and companies started to lay off because it snowed in a couple places in the United States. The rest of the United States was fine, but these places made the entire economy completely implode on itself, really. So this goes on to say that 2014 will be the year the recovery from the Great Recession finally achieves the robust growth that's needed to accelerate hiring. Really? So we're seeing all these retail stores closing, laying off thousands upon thousands of people. We see these major corporations, Barclays, UBS, Dell, Sony, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all these companies laying off thousands upon thousands of people. Where are these people getting jobs? If every single other financial institution or company is laying off, where are they going to get the same paying jobs? Now, I'm not talking, oh, I got laid off and I was making $100,000, now I'm getting $50,000 job. You're making half of what you were making before, or if you're getting a part-time job, you're not employed the same way. You're employed at a lower level at this time. So I don't see where they're getting this from. I don't understand where they're getting this. And of course, they're getting it from thin air, just like they do with the money. They're printing it, they're creating it out of thin air, and they're making up propaganda to make everyone believe that we are in some type of an economy. Now, consumer confidence missed again. It tumbles most to a low of 15 months right now. Confidence dropped from a revised 83.9 to an 82.3 as the present situation dropped its most in 15 months. So we're having problems here. And people who are planning to buy a car or any type of major appliance, it has dropped to a 5-month low. They are not planning to do anything at this time. Guess what they're doing? They're keeping their money because they are scared. They are afraid because they hear rumblings that there are more layoffs going on. People are not secure in their jobs. They are nervous, and those people who are laid off, they don't know if they can find a job. And those people who've been looking still can't find a job. They haven't been on an interview within the last 4 months or 4 weeks. And now what that means is you're not even counted in the unemployment figures. So guess what? This entire market is crumbling around us. It is not getting better like they're telling us. Now, Case-Shiller is out there, and they're saying that the prices of homes missed their expectations of 13% increase. It came in at around 12.86%. Prices have now declined for 4 months in a row, the longest negative stretch in actual home prices since March of 2012. The prices are starting to come down at this point. They cannot be sustained because what do we have? We have investment companies, hedge funds pumping up this market. The American people are tapped out. They're not going out to get mortgages. The mortgage originations are in decline. People do not have the down payment. The mortgage companies understand this. That's why they've lowered it from 25 or 20% down to from 5 to 3%. Some places even 0 because they're trying to get anyone that has a pulse in to purchase a home. Please, please buy this because we need to unload the homes from these investment companies. They do not want to hold on to these houses any longer. And what's worse, even Case-Shiller itself appears to have given up on a housing as the driver of wealth effect. 5 years into the recovery from the recession, the economy will need to look to gains in consumer spending. But guess what? Those gains in consumer spending, they're not there. People do not have the money. So we're not seeing it in housing. We're not seeing it in consumer spending because people are tapped out. They don't have work. And right now what we're seeing is 13 cities declined for the month of February in prices, and this is going to start to spread all across the country. More and more cities are going to report in that housing prices are declining because there are no American people to pick up the slack. This was pumped up. The housing shortage that they are continually claiming is artificial. They've been keeping houses off the market. Those people who are foreclosed, the banks are not taking them. They're letting the people live there even though they're not making payments. It makes no difference right now. The housing market is done, and they're trying to pump it up for the very last time before it completely implodes. And this is why they're starting with the subprime. This is why they're lowering the down payment. This is why they're going back to the adjustable rate mortgage. They're trying to do everything and anything to pump this market up the best they can. Now, I have to say, the American home ownership dream is pretty much officially dead at this point. Q1 home ownership rate was about 64.8%. This is the lowest in 19 years. Now we have to look at the 5-year growth in personal income. And what we are seeing, if we go back to 2000, personal income growth was around about 17% or so. Since that time, it has been declining. And ever since we hit that 2008, where it was around 15%, it has declined since that time. 2009, it declined to about 5%. We saw it even decline even further in 2012 to about 0%. Now here in 2014, we are negative 5% right now. So it is not getting better. things are definitely getting worse. And if we look at all the jobs that are going on, we have many, many layoffs since the beginning of this year, and we're continually seeing more and more layoffs. Toyota is closing their headquarters in North Kentucky. They're laying off about 1,600 people. General Dynamics is laying off 170. Siemens, they haven't announced the number, but they're saying it's going to be in the thousands. This is not getting better, and there's a report out there saying that 20% of American families are unemployed right now, according to a shocking new number that were just released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. 20% of American families do not have a single person that is working. At this point, if you can believe it, the number of Americans getting money or benefits from the federal government each month exceeds the number of full-time workers in the private sector by more than 60 million. In 2013, there were about 80 million families in the United States. 16 million, or 20%, no one had a job. More useful number is the employment population ratio. According to the employment population ratio, the percentage of working age Americans that actually have a job has been below 59% for more than 4 years in a row. That means that more than 41% of all working age Americans do not have a job. It is not getting better. And if we look even further at the job situation, in the 4 years since the end of the Great Recession, most of the job growth has been in low-wage sector, with service jobs which are far outpacing higher wage employment opportunities. A new report from the National Employment Law Project, a research and advocacy group, found that weak recovery has replaced good jobs with bad ones. And we've seen this. We've seen these people who have had great corporate jobs, and I know people who have great corporate jobs. They're making a nice income. They've been looking for jobs, and most of them actually can't even find work. They're not even getting a reply on their resume. But those few who do, the jobs that are being offered are much, much lower in pay than what they had. And we can see that this is a continuing trend, and we can see that more and more people are leaving their high-paying jobs, moving into lower-paid jobs or even part-time jobs, and this is why the people do not have the disposable income. This is why retail is imploding on itself. This is why housing is imploding on itself. People just don't have the money. About 3.6 million jobs were lost in higher wage industries during the downturn. Since then, however, the recovery has only seen about 2.6 million. We lost about 1 million great jobs. They are gone. Lower wage sectors lost about 2 million jobs, but they gained back about 3.8 million. So a lot more people are going into the food industry, going into retail, but we're going to see those disappear now because a lot of stores are closing. So and hospitality, I have to say, people are going into those industries because they cannot find work in the wage that they had before, so they are pretty much taking anything they possibly can, and these people are the underemployed people. And this is what is happening right now. Now, what are most Americans actually worrying about at this time? Well, most Americans right now are worrying about retirement savings, unexpected medical costs, and maintaining one's standard of living. Typically, the top of the list of the 8 financial items that Gallup has tracked annually since 2001. A strong majority of Americans, particularly those aged 30 to 64, worry about having enough money for retirement. Why? Why are they worrying about this? Because they're not in those jobs right now that are giving them a retirement package. They are in a part-time or no job situation, and they cannot save for retirement. And this is why we're seeing this as one of the biggest worries. And a lot of people are worrying that they can't send their children to college because they don't have that income coming in anymore. Most of them are just trying to make ends meet by living in an apartment now. Hopefully they can make rent, they can pay for food and pay for their car, and just get to that job and just keep the status quo going. And this is what they're actually doing today. Many people do not have that extra income that they used to have. They lost their homes, they lost their wealth, they're using up their savings, and things are just getting worse and worse and worse. And there was a poll out there about millennials, and what's happening is A poll released by Harvard University Institute of Politics showed that young Americans, specifically millennials, have historically low trust in government. The people polled were ages 18 to 29 have lost trust in a variety of different major public institutions, including the president, the military, Congress, the Supreme Court, media, and the federal government as a whole. Trust in the president to do the right thing all the time, or most of the time, has fallen from 44% in 2010 to 32% in 2014. The military saw their same numbers drop from 53 to 47. But one of the most telling numbers that could be part of the reason for a lack of trust in these institutions is the plunge in the trust of the corporate media. Their trust has completely dropped. In 2010, the trust in mainstream media was around 17%. Now in 2014, it is at 11%. So it is completely falling apart. These millennials and most of the people now are starting to realize the corporate media is not telling them the truth. They are just following the instructions of the government, and they're losing their trust in the news that's coming out of the corporate media, because most of it's propaganda today, and we have to refer back to the NDAA, where the American government is allowed now to lie or use propaganda against the American people, and I think that's in Section 501C of the NDAA. And we can see how this is turning out. Pretty soon, no one will be tuning into the corporate media, because it will just be propaganda all the time, every time, and no one's going to believe them at all. Now, we're seeing a huge increase in firearms applications. Now, I understand that the government would really love to disarm the American people, and this is their goal. They've been trying and trying and trying. Today we had a shooting in Georgia, which is very interesting, because you have to remember that new law was passed in Georgia. It does not go into effect until July 1st, and all of a sudden we had some type of shooting incident. Of course, the shooter is dead now, and it just so happens that it happened in Georgia with this new law. Just seems too convenient at this time. But what we're seeing is the firearms applications have increased by about 380%. ATF Deputy Assistant Director Marvin Richardson, the surge contributed to a 70,000 application backlog, requiring the ATF to hire 15 additional people and to reassign 15 existing employees to combat the backlog. We have seen dramatic, unprecedented growth in the firearms and ammunition industry as direct result of consumer demand for our products in the last 5 years. And we're seeing that people are going out and purchasing more and more firearms. The gun control disarmament section of the government is really not working the way they thought it was going to work. Every time they come out with something else, that they're going to impose new laws or do something else, it seems like more and more people go out and purchase weapons. Well, it looks like the Supreme Court declined to hear the case from activists and journalists and academics about the NDAA. It seems like they don't want to hear about it. Obama administration, who continually re-signs it each year, where they can detain U.S. citizens if they're considered a domestic terrorist or dealing with some type of domestic terrorist. If a journalist actually talked to a domestic terrorist or an al-Qaeda terrorist or whatever they want to call it, they can arrest these people and throw them in jail without due process for 1 year. And the Supreme Court didn't want to hear anything about it. They didn't want to appeal it. They didn't want to do anything, and it has not been heard. The appeals court said the challengers had no standing because they could not show the provisions has any bearing on the government's authority to detain U.S. citizens. The court said the plaintiffs who were not U.S. citizens lacked standing to sue because they did not show a sufficient threat that the government will detain them under the provision. Journalists also often talk with terrorist groups or individuals. Chris Hedges has certainly done so. If the government someday didn't like the reports this or that journalist was churning out, might he be targeted for indefinite detention? The court's failure to hear this case is a terrible move, and when this law is used at some point in the future to detain Americans without due process, the court will will be remembered for ensuring that inevitable obscenity. Now, what we can see right now is that, yes, the clause is if you are considered a domestic terrorist, a radicalist, if you've been dealing with any type of terrorist, the government can come in and can arrest you, put you in prison for a year without due process. We can see already that Harry Reid and some other government officials were calling Cliven Bundy and others in that group domestic terrorists. So we can see how this law could be used. Again, this is completely null and void according to the Constitution. The Constitution says that every single person has the right to trial by its peers. And right now what we are seeing is they like to bypass that with the word terrorism. Terrorists. So we can see that this is completely null and void according to the Constitution, and I can't even believe the Supreme Court didn't even want to look into it. And we have to remember the NSA, spies on everyone, and we can see they might have something on the Supreme Court judge, on government officials, and they use this to their benefit so they can keep these laws in effect. Now, we understand that the government would love to control the Internet, and we see President Obama has already handed off the Internet to the UN, and we can see they're taking other precautions to try to control the Internet by letting the ISP providers make fast, medium, slow lanes and have those people who want their websites to be seen just pay a huge amount of money, and we will let your website be on the front. They will always come up, and everyone else who cannot pay will be in the background, and we won't care about them. But what we're looking at right now, state officials in Michigan and Pennsylvania have been awarded roughly about $2.4 million in federal funds to test an online ID system that's been called a driver's license for the Internet. So pretty much what they want to do is they want to give every single person an ID so you can have access to the Internet. And what that ID will contain will be all your information. Maybe they'll plug this into the real ID system that the DHS is having all states come in compliance with. Maybe they will do that where all your information is in a federal database. You get online, your ID is scanned in once, and then you have access to pretty much everything. Now, of course, they can track you, they can censor you, they have full control over who you are on the Internet, and they can do whatever they want. And again, you have to remember, this is also very dangerous because now you have one ID for pretty much everything. If somebody actually steals that one ID, they have access to the kingdom. Right now, for me, I have different passwords and usernames for different areas that I go on the Internet with, so just in case something happens, they can't get into the rest of my stuff. This new ID system is one ID. It's a single ID type of system, and it will allow them to have access to pretty much everything if they get a hold of it. Plus, the government will have the ability to track every single person. And this, I feel, is a huge problem because it makes it easier for the government to censor you. It makes it easier for them to see what you're doing, and this is what they want. They want to know what everyone is doing, especially those people on the Internet. They want to see what sites you're visiting, who you're visiting. They've been trying to get a lot of this information from Google. Google hasn't been handing it over. This will make it a lot easier. They will not need any of the search engines to do this anymore. They will just have it all the time. They will track every single thing that you do. Now, the Senate is out there, and they agree that the people should not have any knowledge of how the government is using drones and who they are killing. And the Senate removes the modest provision that would reveal number of people killed by U.S. attacks overseas. They're saying the people don't need to know this, they won't understand it, and they really don't need to have any type of knowledge about this whatsoever. Of course they don't want us to know this because they're killing innocent people. They're saying they're going after terrorists, but they really aren't. These are the people in these countries who are fighting back, who want their country back. This is what they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know that all these drone strikes that they are doing is because of the central banks, to keep control of the private Western central banks in these countries, to keep the dollar as the reserve currency of these countries, and they are killing people to do this. And they don't, and they don't want the people to know, and they're saying that the people wouldn't even understand why they are doing this, and this is why they are leaving this out. And the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Obama administration agree on this. The American people should not know the number of people killed by U.S. drone attacks overseas, nor should they hope to understand the circumstances under which such lethal killings are authorized or executed. Of course, they are covering this up completely. The bill authorizing intelligence operation in fiscal 2014 passed out of the Senate Intelligence Committee in November, and it originally required the President to issue an annual public report clarifying the total number of combatants and non-combatant civilians killed or injured by drone strikes in the previous year. And of course, the Senate removed this section because Obama said, his administration said, we're going to do something else that will let everyone know what we're doing. And you know what that is. That is absolutely nothing. They will do nothing whatsoever. Now, Japan is out there, and they are implementing sanctions against Russia. The decision of Tokyo to introduce visa sanctions against a number of Russian citizens was perceived by Moscow with disappointment and certainly will not go unanswered. Japan's effort to exert pressure on Russia will not promote de-escalation of tension in Ukraine. Of course it won't, because Russia is not doing anything. What they are doing is they are standing by and supporting those people. Those people are having the protest. Those people are having peaceful protests. Those people in Donetsk just want to have a referendum and secede from the puppet government in Ukraine, which was put into place with a coup d'etat which cost the U.S. government and the U.S. taxpayers $5 billion. And they do not want to be a part of this. But of course, the EU had to go along with the United States. And if you ever notice, isn't it strange how the United States is driving this whole entire thing? They had nothing to do with the coup. They had nothing, but they are driving everything. That kind of makes you believe that, yeah, they are behind all of this. And the EU imposed more sanctions on Russia over Ukraine crisis. The European Union announced asset freezes and travel bans on 15 Russians and Ukrainians. But again, these measures weren't as aggressive as the United States sanctions that they placed on the individuals. And again, all these sanctions are on individuals. They are not on Russia itself. And of course, China is out there. They're backing Russia. They are slamming the sanctions that were placed on individuals and certain companies. And they're saying that this is absolutely ridiculous. This is not going to help or resolve any type of crisis by doing this. And of course, this is continuing. Kerry is out there with the propaganda saying that the U.S. may impose sanctions on all sectors of the Russian economy. Now, this is huge propaganda, because if they were going to really do this, they would have done it already. They would have gone ahead and put sanctions on the entire sector of the economy of Russia. And he went on to say that the U.S. may impose sanctions on a whole sectors of Russian economy if Russia continues the same policy towards Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said that this is an interview. He said that they will place these sanctions on Russia if they continually escalate the situation. Now, of course, they're not escalating anything right here. They're not even doing anything. The people are peacefully protesting. And all I see on the other side, NATO, the United States government, they're continually bringing in military assets. They're continually bringing in soldiers. They're continually bringing in F-16 fighters, and they're continually surrounding Russia right now with all of this hardware. And all I hear is threats, sanctions, threats, stop from NATO, from Ukraine, from United States. I really don't see anything else happening except them continually going on and on. Now, Russia, the protesters in Lugansk region in Donetsk. They have taken control of some government buildings. It was very peaceful. Actually, the police just stood away and said, "Go ahead, take the buildings. We are not going to stop you. We're not going to do anything." And this was completely peaceful. There was no fire bombs. There were no rockets. There were no guns or anything like that. And they took over another government building because all they want is to be heard. They want the same respect that the United States gave the opposition, the ones they were paying for to take over Ukrainian government. They're doing the same thing as Crimea. They want a referendum. They want to secede from the puppet government, Kiev, Ukraine. That's what they are trying to do. Now, Russia is pulling off their troops off the Ukraine border right now. They were having drills. They're saying that Ukraine's government, their acting government right now, says they are going to stop the anti-terrorism shakedown, and they're going to they promise to have peace right now, and Russia said they will back off their troops and stop the drills on the border at this time. Now, of course, Kerry is out there, and he's saying that the U.S. taped Moscow's calls to its Ukraine spies. Just a couple days ago, Kerry said they've captured these people, but they can't present them to you because, that would point out who the captors are. And of course, national security, we can't, let anyone know. Now they have recordings of what has gone on, but they haven't produced it. They haven't shown any of this. And of course, why haven't they? Don't just tell us that you have them. Show them to us. Who are these people who are the spies? Is it what? Is it national security? And again, until they show us something, it is complete propaganda. And this went on to say the United States has proof that the Russian government in Moscow is running a network of spies inside eastern Ukraine because the U.S. government has recorded their conversations. Intel is producing taped conversations of intelligence operatives taking the orders from Moscow, and everybody can tell the difference in the accents, in the idioms, in the language. So produce the tapes. Produce it. Put it on YouTube. Let everyone see it. Let's hear it. Let's see what you're talking about. Because I hate to say this, from all the lies that I've been hearing from the U.S. government and the corporate media, let's see, Iraq, they have weapons of mass destruction. No, they didn't have that. We have to go to war in Afghanistan to look for bin Laden. False, fake, phony, lied again. Let's take Assad has chemical weapons. He used it on his own people. Again, they lied to us again. We have to go into Ukraine because the people really want it and we're backing them. Lied again. It was a coup. Actually, there were tapes and intel that Nuland was discussing who to place into power way before this happened. So for us, the American people, to believe John Kerry right now, they need to give us some proof because all I see is lies, propaganda, lies, propaganda. Until you show us something, we can't believe you. Now, Britain, France, they're going to deploy 8 fighter jets to Lithuania and Poland. UK and France deployed 8 fighter jets to Lithuania to strengthen NATO air defense over the Baltic regions amid rising tensions in Ukraine. Well, the only ones that are rising tensions are the anti-terrorism groups and the Donbass battalions going out with Blackwater and other paid mercenaries and trying to push down the people from having this referendum. That's all you're seeing. The people are marching peacefully in the streets. They really aren't doing much. So all this propaganda that they're putting out there, that Russia's invading Crimea, Russia's having 100,000 troops they're going to invade every single day, they're telling us this, it's complete fake, false, and phony. Nothing is happening. They are making all of this up. Now, the problem is that the United States military weapons are not as good as we all think they are. The U.S. newly developed radar-evading F-35 Joint Strike Fighter will not be able to escape Russian radars at this time. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter is not in fact stealthy in the eyes of a growing number of Russian and Chinese radars. They can spot the plane. It doesn't work. They've been having many, many problems with this plane, and right now it seems like they've this plane could not avoid being spotted in the sky. So that is a huge, huge problem. Now, we understand the Middle East is completely falling apart at this time. Yemen is launching major operations against al-Qaeda. Of course, al-Qaeda, the terrorists, are the people of Yemen who are fighting to get their country back, but they're calling them terrorists just like the people in Donetsk. They're also called terrorists. Military officials say Yemeni forces have launched a large-scale operation to flush al-Qaeda militants out of southern towns of the impoverished Arab country. Army troops backed by local militiamen moved last week in to purge the towns. They are trying to get rid of these people. They are trying to push them down. They're using drone strikes. They're doing everything they possibly can. Now, the Pentagon is quietly sending more intelligence officers to Iraq because the same problem is happening in Iraq. The people are rising up. They want the private Western Central Bank out of their country. They want the U.S. government out of their country. And this is the biggest worry of the central bankers, U.S. government, because if they push them out of these countries, they will start selling their oil not using the U.S. dollar, and they will remove the private Western Central Bank, and they don't want this to happen. The United States is reportedly increasing the number of intelligence officers deployed to Iraq amidst new waves of violence there being attributed to jihadists from the group known as the Islamic State of Iraq. They give them all these names. It's the people of the country. They want their country back. They were invaded. They were taken over. A puppet government was put into place, and now these people want their government back. They want their country back. Now, we're also seeing the same thing in Libya, but right now the Libyan people are really on the cusp of taking back their country. Gunmen storm Libyan parliament, start shooting, and force lawmakers to abandon vote on next prime minister. Several people wounded by the shooting, and again, they are pushing the puppet government out of office in Libya. And this is why the United States government has said if the Libyan government cannot take control, they will bring in international forces. And of course, the Libyan government made a call to say, please help us, to the international community, and this would be the excuse to bring in NATO, UN, and U.S. troops to take control of the country again, because they will not let these people take over, create a country, and take over the government and remove the private Western Central Bank and sell the oil not using the U.S. dollar. They will not let this happen. They will come in with force, and they will push these people down. Now, what we are seeing right now is they are saying that because of the Snowden leaks, terrorists have changed their methods. They're no longer using the payphones. They're no longer using their cell phones, and they cannot track these people. Terrorists have substantially changed their methods of communication since leaks by former U.S. intelligence operative Edward Snowden, hindering intelligence agencies' efforts to track them. So it's getting very hard to track them because of what they've done. And let me just say, for real terrorists and real operations, nobody's going on Facebook, nobody's going on Twitter, they're not using their cell phone, they're doing it in a way where they cannot be seen or heard from. They're using different methods, most likely not electronic, so they cannot be spied upon. And of course, they're calling this the Snowden effect, which has been hurting the intelligence community because they cannot track any of these people. And this is actually the build-up for the false flag, because they want you to know that because of Snowden, it hurt their ability to stop terrorists. Terrorists are running around in the country in lone wolf packs. They're bomb makers. They're coming out of Syria. They're cyber attacking, and they're just getting ready to wreak havoc on the country. Now, what's happening is the economy is imploding on itself. They have no way out of this, so they're going to stage a false flag event to blame it on another country, and this is what they're looking to do. And this goes on to say, our adversaries, the terrorists, are out there, now have full sight of the sorts of tools and range of techniques that are being used by government, he said. I can tell you, data shows a substantial reduction in the use of those methods of communication as a result of the Snowden leaks, and now we cannot track these people. And again, This has nothing to do with what they're talking about. They're building the propaganda for this next false flag event. Now, very interestingly, they've told us that Assad has biological weapons and chemical weapons. CNN reported this. They had special intel back in, I think, November or December. England came out with it. Now the U.S. intelligence community is coming out saying, yes, he has chemical and biological weapons, and they're hidden and they're not accounted for. And what's very interesting is the Obama administration killed a multi-billion-dollar proposal to deploy a new self-operating bioweapon sensor in U.S. cities. How convenient. They also cut the spending of nuclear detection in New York City. Of course, he mentioned about a nuclear weapon going off in New York, and Homeland Security, Jay Johnson last week finalized plans to forego the procurement of a third generation of BioWatch technology. So what we can see happening here is they are not funding any type of technology. They will not be able to detect anything, and this will help them set the stage for the next false flag event. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.